of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming to listen today. People, I'm sure, will keep coming. We're only 1 minute past 4. But just first of all, we have with us Haneen, Mazen, and Mohammed, and they really are 3 of the most incredible people that I have come to know over the years, working with Become the Voice and working in Palestine. It's a mixture here of, well, Mohammed, who is a incredible leader of a charity, Hebron International Resource Network, and he has been of great support to Become the Voice, but he is a huge support and pillar in the community, especially in Hebron. Whenever there is any kind of crisis and there needs to be funding and it needs to be brought to the communities quickly to help rebuild schools or to help build spaces in which can be used, for example, for women to work in so they can become economically independent, it's always Hearn that's there. So if ever you go to Hebron, you can't be there for very long before you meet him. So that is Mohammed here with us today. Here. Do you want to say hello?
Yes, hi everybody. It's definitely a pleasure to join you here in this evening. And as she just said, you're more than welcome to actually to come and to Hebron and see things for yourself. You'll be more than welcome here.
Thank you. And then we have Mazen, who has been with Become the Voice from the very beginning, and he actually comes from a very difficult area in Hebron. His house is covered in bullet holes, and that's because it is above the old city, which is where the 2 communities come to meet each other. And it's an area fraught with tension, and there has been conflict after conflict in this area. And Mazen's home has actually been used as a military outpost over the years. So he really is right in the heart of that part of Hebron. And despite that background, he is a lawyer with 2 master's degrees, and he managed to get those master's degrees in Europe with brilliant scholarships. So I've been really honored to know him both in Palestine and when he has come to London as well. And he is a brilliant speaker on these issues, so excited to be hearing from Mazen. Mazen, can you say hello? Might have to unmute.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Scarlett, for this introduction, and I'm glad to join you today.
Thank you, Mazen. And we also have Haneen. Haneen is really quite an outstanding young woman who works tirelessly for women's rights, and also for LGBTQ+ rights in the West Bank. So her work is really remarkable, quite controversial, and I am forever impressed by what she is doing and the stand that she takes. She is obviously here today to talk to us about her experience as a Palestinian in Palestine under the occupation, but her work around women's rights is really remarkable. If any of you are interested in asking her more about that at another time, I would advise you to do that. So Haneen, could you say hello?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Actually, I'm so happy for being a part of this discussion, and I will be so happy also talking about the situation here in Palestine, especially at this time, and also to answer the questions that will be asked during this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Haneen. So today, obviously, this event is free, but lots of people are wondering where to send donations. And Mohammed said to send donations to MAP UK, which is an organisation that is getting medical aid out to the front line and to hospitals. So I think later on in the chat, when people start talking, I will put the link to their website in the chat so that you can see that for yourself. So I will be donating later, and I'm sure Mohammed will say something on MAP UK as well. So if we could first hear from Mohammed, please.
Yes, hi, again, good evening, everybody. just to, I don't know if you want to give you just an idea about what's happening today, or should we start from where, what the whole thing actually where did it start and until where we are today?
So I think with us today, mainly are PhD students who are either working in this area, or if not, will definitely have a good knowledge. But maybe the highlights in case there's anyone with us who doesn't.
Okay, well, there is a lot of, again, I would say propaganda, media, what have you, is showing that Israel right now is in an area of self-defense. That that this whole escalation has taken place for the past, I think, 10 days or so, have actually started when Hamas initiated missile strikes on Jerusalem and on Tel Aviv on a certain time. However, this is where we beg to differ, and my Palestinian colleagues are here to add to this. But our understanding from a little bit more of a deeper analysis of what is taking place, and knowing the personality of Bibi Netanyahu, we actually have seen this. A lot of the Palestinians have actually predicted that there's going to be war against Gaza ever since day 1 or 2 of Ramadan, which was on very early on in April, because there has been a lot of internal reasons that pointed out towards this, mainly the fact that there has been already like 4 elections that has taken place in Israel, and the same obstacle, the same kind of a gridlock that they have inside of the Israeli society, that is actually producing these same results time and time again. But what differed this time around is that every time that for the last 3 elections, that the mandate to actually to form a government go to Bibi Netanyahu, and then one way or the other he manages to actually to make that puzzle work, that makes him still the prime minister, and then they go for only short period of time, and then the whole thing collapses, and then they go for another election. Well, this time around, it seems that actually it was not going for his favor this time. And it was proved correctly, especially that, he was giving the mandate again to be the to form a government, and he failed. And there were some signs that actually that he, that the mandate would go to the next person in line, which is Lapid. And there was some sign that there's actually Lapid will be able to actually to form a government, given that there's another arch rival of Bibi Netanyahu, his name is Naftali Bennett, have actually said that I am considering to actually to do a coalition with Lapid in order for us to form a government. And that was a serious threat to the dominance of Bibi Netanyahu and his grab on power. He has been as a prime minister for the last 12 years, and he really seriously is risking, or was risking, the possibility of being deposed, and that he's not going to be a player anymore, and that he is going to actually to go to jail because of the corruption cases that are against him in the court of law. So in order for him to actually to kind of run away from that and make sure that he's still in as a key player in Israel, he started to actually, he knows that, if you want to end up with some sort of a confrontation with Hamas, you have to heat up Jerusalem. The whole thing has to be in Jerusalem. So there was, I mean, and you can see that some of the steps that he has taken that absolutely made no sense whatsoever, specifically when it came down to Damascus Gate. Damascus Gate has always been known, especially during Ramadan nights, that a lot of the Jerusalemites, once they are done with their prayers, that they will actually, this is their open space, is the Damascus Gate. So why would, it still puzzles me, what is the security reason behind actually having to put iron gates in Damascus Gate and preventing the Palestinians from actually sitting there. So he started with that. It escalated a little bit more. Started to actually escalate all the way until he ended up attacking Al-Aqsa Mosque on the holiest night of Ramadan, the 28th of Ramadan, when they actually end up really invading the Al-Aqsa Mosque and trying to use all of these. There was about like 50, maybe about 30,000 Palestinians that were actually inside that day. They had to actually to evict from the Aqsa Mosque using sound bombs, using tear gas, using weapons, whatever, in order for them. That was very, very I would say inflammatory, to the point that you cannot actually not do anything about that. So this is internally, and this is why we ended up with actually Gaza threatening that there's going to be this big march of the settlers, that they were actually going to go through Damascus Gate and they are going to reach Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that was like too much for anybody to bear. So this is internally, and maybe you can talk about Sheikh Jarrah on a different issue. But externally, that's also was very important that Bibi Netanyahu, ever since that Biden became the president of the United States, he has been totally ignored by Joe Biden. Versus, for example, if you look at the way that Trump has actually treated Bibi Netanyahu, when Trump was elected, the first person to talk to was Bibi Netanyahu. The first person that he was welcoming, or at least one of the first to welcome in the White House, was Bibi Netanyahu. There was like some sort of a mind match between Bibi and Trump. So he has while versus when you talk to Joe Biden, he did not call him, to the point that even the Israeli ambassador to the United States actually sent out a tweet to Joe Biden and to everybody, basically saying, "Dear President," and that was like about maybe 3 weeks into the presidency of Joe Biden. He sent a tweet saying that, "Dear President, we do have an Israeli Prime Minister. His name is Joe Biden. His name is Bibi Netanyahu, and his phone number is da 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 da." So, as if if you don't know his phone number, call him. So that kind of an ignorance, or making maybe irrelevant in the Middle East in general, and this is why there's been a lot of attacks against Iran in the Persian Gulf and in the Red Sea, and actually the attack at one of the nuclear plants inside of Iran by Israel are really kind of attempts to actually to show Joe Biden that me, as Bibi Netanyahu, is still a relevant player, and you cannot bypass me. You cannot just go ahead and do that nuclear agreement with Iran without having to consult with Israel, because that's exactly what Joe Biden was doing. He was actually ignoring anything that Israel has to say, and he was willing to actually to go forward with this issue of having to have a nuclear deal with Iran reinstated. And that's, this is Bibi Netanyahu baby. He's the one who actually was so against that deal. So now that Joe Biden is actually ignoring him, so basically he said, fine, you cannot ignore me I'm going to make war. And I think this is it. This is the combination of the lack of recognition, let's say, by the Joe Biden administration versus the possibility of him having to lose power inside of Israel is the key for what we are actually seeing right now. It has nothing to do with security. It has nothing, and even a lot of people in Israel are saying right now that we should actually end this war right now without even having to do negotiation, without nothing, because they entered that war without having any kind of a specific goal. In 2014, they were talking about, okay, we're going to have to devastate and overrule Hamas, and this is why they went for 52 days, and they started to use all of these things, and at the end of the day, they stopped. This time around, they had no specific goal, and this is why a lot of things are pointing towards that he got us into this mess because in order for him to actually to have political gains. And actually he did, because right now Joe Biden has called him already 4 times. And Naftali Bennett, who was threatening to actually to form a government with Lapid, have actually said that I'm not going to actually to do the government with Lapid anymore, and I'm going back to Bibi Netanyahu. So Bibi is going to become the prime minister once again because he's the savior. He is the one who actually taught Hamas a lesson, which is there's no truth to that, or let's say proof to that. But he's going to actually be able to sell that to the Israelis, saying that I'm the savior and this is why you have to elect me again. So it's purely, from my point of view, it's just an ego trip. That, and I tell you, if I was an Israeli, I really would actually go and sue him for this, because he is putting the lives of Israelis first in danger, as well as putting the Palestinians' lives, of course, in mortal danger. So yeah, that's my take into this.
Thank you, Mohammed. That's really interesting. Actually, quite a few of the points you made there is not anything that I think any of us have actually heard. From what we are hearing in the news, it was a coincidental overlapping of Jerusalem Day and Eid, and then the marching through Al-Aqsa and resulting conflict was just a poorly timed Jerusalem Day, which Jerusalem Day in itself is very insulting. But this was a particularly hot Jerusalem Day in terms of clashing. So is that not right?
There's nothing kind of coincidental. He knew that this is what is going to happen, and it comes down to if you have like over there's a coincidental days like this, the Jewish ones always take precedent, and it was building up again since day one in Jerusalem, especially when there's no kind of a security reason behind closing Damascus Gate in front of purely Palestinians just assembling and not chanting even, just having to have a chit chat between each other. They've been doing it for years upon years, and there's no security reason behind why you'd be able to actually to stop that from happening. And the whole thing actually ended up with clashes, and then at the end of the day, they end up moving the iron gates that they put up. And so there was some sort of de-escalation, and then started to actually to go back into the Al-Aqsa Mosque when they prevented people from going and praying all night, for example. And then they actually having to go into the Al-Aqsa Mosque on that holy night. It was just too much to bear. Even the people inside of Al-Aqsa Mosque, they were talking about, please Gaza attack, please Gaza attack, and Gaza, as the way that they put it, have actually responded to that.
Rather than it being tied up with Sheikh Jarrah?
Well, that's actually adding more oil to the fire. Sheikh Jarrah has been, it's a case that has been going on since at least 2009, and I know even before that. Now that the High Court have actually agreed that the only solution will be either to evict the families, which they kind of moved away from that a little bit, and gave some sort of about 2 or 3 days for the owners for the Palestinians who are living there to get some sort of an agreement with the company that is being hired by the settlers to actually to get back those houses. So what that company said, that okay, no, we will be able to actually to allow you, we can go to the court and allow you to stay, given that you are going to say or accept that we are the owners of the land. And the kind of the law that they are using in that specific case is that it is said that land that is being there is actually, it used to be owned by Jews before 1948. 48 takes place, you end up with Jordan coming in, and Jordan actually took that as enemy property, And then after that, they gave it to UNRWA, which is the United Nations Refugee Agency. In exchange of UNRWA having to build the houses and then get refugees from 48, Palestinian refugees from 48 to actually to come and live in that area. So transactional wise, it was correct. It was, you know, in the books and what have you. But the law that these Israelis are actually using right now, they're saying that if you're a Jew and you can prove that you have lands in East Jerusalem, or in East Jerusalem specifically, that you owned before 1948, or Jewish people, does not have to be you, you know, you can represent anybody, that you can actually claim that. Versus if you are a Palestinian Jerusalemites who have land in 1948, like West Jerusalem, for example, you cannot use that law in order for you to actually to ask for your land who has been taken over by the Jewish National Fund or whatever. You cannot actually use that law. So there's no duplication in the law. The Israelis can claim their land that they got in East Jerusalem before 1948, while the Palestinians cannot actually do the same thing for property in West Jerusalem. So that kind of the fallacy of that law was, you know, was really present. But they ended up going to court anyways, because this is the only way that they can actually, you know, work with their case. The company at the end of it, they said, okay, you know, we will let you stay at your home. That will be fine with us, as long as you actually give us some sort of an acknowledgement that that land is ours. The people came back 2 days after that the court have said that, and they basically have refused to do so, because they know that, you know, once they say that this is okay, khalas, this is your land, that within 2 or 3 years that these settlers will come back again and say, given the fact that this is our land, given the fact that you actually did not abide by, you know, A, B, or C of the rental agreement, then we're going to evict you. So they're just going to, so they're going to give them the ownership, and they're just only delaying the time that they're going to actually to be evicted. And it so happens that the last days that they have, that, you know, the 2 or 3 days that has been given to them was also coinciding with Ramadan, and the middle of Ramadan, and all of that. So you have Al-Aqsa Mosque, you have Sheikh Jarrah, you have Bab al-Amud, Damascus Gate, all that comes together. And with Bibi is just like fueling things, because my understanding is the head of the police in East Jerusalem is only a puppet to Bibi Netanyahu. So anything that Bibi Netanyahu will tell him to do, he will actually go, despite the acceleration that's going to escalate the situation. So the whole thing is just, you know, just blew up. And this is exactly, I think, what Netanyahu wanted for it to happen.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that oversight, especially looking into Netanyahu and Biden, because that's something that our news doesn't often cover. So it was really insightful. Before we speak to Haneen, could you just tell us a little bit about what are you near Hebron at the moment?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Mohammed quickly before Haneen, and then Haneen. Sorry,
okay, I thought you are asking me. Okay.
I'm coming to you. How is the situation? Are you in Hebron, Mohammed?
Yeah, I'm in Hebron. I live next to the Hebron University, so I'm like at the heart of the city.
Can you explain to everyone here what you're experiencing in Hebron at the moment? What is the situation there?
Well, our main goal these days is that we're always doing monitoring. So anything that happens around like this earlier, like about like an hour ago, there was a lady that was killed next to Kiryat Arba. So tomorrow we're supposed to actually to go and investigate this and see, you know, who is she, what kind of circumstances, eyewitnesses. So anything that has to do with kind of a documentation of what the Israelis are doing, be it settlers, be it the army, it is our responsibility to actually to take a look at this and then try to to provide that for international organizations for further investigations or to raise concerns or what have you. And we are covering the entire south of the West Bank. So we cover Hebron as well as Bethlehem. And we can definitely see that ever since the war has started, that we actually have a large increase of killing incidents, be it by the settlers or by the army, and definitely a lot of harassment is currently taking place, to the point that actually I was talking to a friend of mine. We were in Al Arub refugee camp about, again, 2 hours ago, paying condolences to one of our friends whose son was shot dead 3 days ago. And we ended up meeting with a lot of people that we work with in the field, and they were saying the same sentiments, that it used to be the fact that once you see settlers are trying to actually trespass on your house, on your land, that you will be able to actually to go and confront and kind of document and go and complain and what have you. These days they're saying that we are not daring to even to do that. Like in Susia, for example, in the south, my friend actually told us that the settlers will send very small young kids, and they start throwing stones at the Palestinian homes. And at the top of the mountain, you can definitely see the older settlers with machine guns, as well as with the army, just ready. If somebody comes out as a Palestinian and try to actually to kind of throw a stone back, or to tell them, what are you doing here? Basically, you are really putting his life in danger. So these days, everybody is trying as much as possible to stay away from the settlers, because it seems that they want to have blood. It's the same thing in the old city of Hebron at the Shuhada Street. There was a couple of days ago when we saw, there's documented where settlers are actually shooting at whatever that they think is threatening their lives. So it's like every incident right now, we are taking it in a much serious context, rather than what it used to be in the past. So definitely dangerous times, and we would not be, maybe the de-escalation will happen once Gaza is over with, but we're not taking chances at this point.
No, and in any other situation where one community was attacking another community, the police, or in this case, the defense forces, would step in and protect the communities from each other. But this is not what's happening.
That is not the case. I mean, we have a lot of videos, especially in the north, next to Nablus, and the outposts that they have there, that you can clearly see that the army is just present, and trying to facilitate as much as possible what the settlers want to do. And if somebody dares to actually to respond back or to defend himself, he really does risk the chance of him being shot. That happened in next to Yetzhar settlement, next to Nablus in general terms, and even inside of 48 in Lud, that happened, in which that the settlers are really the ones who are making the calls. And this is why actually it increases the possibility of you getting killed if you're in that position.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mohammed, for speaking with us. At the end, we're going to take questions. We're going to listen to everybody first. I don't see a chat box. I don't know if there is a chat box. And then if people could put questions in the chat box that we can come to later. Oh yeah, no, I can see a chat box. Okay, brilliant. So if people want to put any questions in there and direct them, then we can all see it and we can come to them at the end. So Haneen.
Okay. So actually, I'm going to be more specific and talking about the current situation and what is happening now at Sheikh Jarrah, especially because there are a lot of silence in the social media, or let me say the international media has decided to be silent. So I think it's our role to narrate the stories of our own stories, and also the stories of our people. So I think, unfortunately, people around the world and they are living in a real denial, and they are completely brainwashed about what is happening in Palestine due to the strategy that Israel has been using several years ago in promoting as how democratic its policies and the strategies that Israel used to use several years ago to show the, let me say, the opposite side of what is really it is, and what is actually what Israel is doing in Palestine, in Jerusalem, and the other parts of the occupied Palestine. So to be more specific, I'm talking about what is happening in Sheikh Jarrah. Actually, 500 Palestinians are now forced to evacuate their houses, their lands, the lands that they have been living in many years ago. The places that where they spend their childhood, their adulthood. So for no reasons, the court in Israel, let me say the unjust court, has decided that these lands and these houses belong to Jews, as to Jews who have been as based on their narration, who were living in Palestine before 1948. So actually, what they keep committing their crime, the crime that they committed in 1980, 1948, when they kicked the Palestinian people in Jaffa and other parts of the occupied Palestine from their homes. So these refugees were forced to leave their lands, as I mentioned, in 1948. So the Jordan donated these lands, and the UNRWA decided to donate to build houses for these refugees. So just imagine, those people will be kicked from their homes for the second time. So actually, this is what it was the turning point. We have been suffering through many years, but what actually brought or let me say what makes all of these things happen, and what is happening now in Gaza, is the fear of the original citizens of a Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood to turn this area as a Shuhada Street in Hebron, where they advocate that Palestinian people and settlers are living peacefully, but actually they are not. The settlers in this area, they keep assaulting the Palestinian people, even when they are at their homes, doing nothing for them. But they are following, let me say, a systemized strategy to force these people indirectly to leave their own houses and to find houses in other areas. So basically, they are occupying the whole area directly and indirectly. So what is actually happening now, the hashtags that we keep using on social media, the posters that we keep publishing, the videos that we keep recording every time. Even we are not supposed to be to talk from a specific organizations. Today we have our own platforms, the social media, including Facebook, Instagram. And in spite of all the difficulties that the social media, they are trying to ban all the posters that relate to what is happening now in Palestine, to as I mentioned before, to keep people in that denial that we in Palestine, we are living peacefully with the Jews, but actually we are not. As a Palestinian youth, a 23 years old Palestinian youth who has been I usually go to Bethlehem, to Ramallah, and other areas in Palestine. I used to practice that kind of the strategies that the occupation used, the checkpoints, all the obstacles they use to ban us from reaching other areas. Let me say, unfortunately, they are trying to normalize that kind of violence for us as a Palestinian youth. But today, I think through the campaigns we are doing on social media, by being in streets, by calling for our rights, we actually threaten their I'm not going to say their strength, because actually without the tools they have, they have no power. I think our voices are 10 times better than the things the strategies they are following, killing children, killing women, killing men with no reasons, just for sometimes they claim that this child is going to shoot or to commit a crime for no reason. They kill people for no reason, actually. So this is the strategy that they are using in Palestine to force people to leave their houses, to leave their lands, and other things that I think today it's our duty to spread much more awareness, to expose the occupation, to expose what they are doing, the things that they are used to force us leaving our homes and leaving our own places and our own land. So many people think that using the hashtags is useless, but actually no. And what makes it powerful is that a lot of international people and people from all over the world today, they know what is happening in Palestine. They sending us messages asking us about Sheikh Jarrah, especially that Sheikh Jarrah is a well located place in Jerusalem, because it connects the west and east of Jerusalem. So they used to spotlight at these places. So that's all for now. I don't know if there are any questions.
Actually, Haneen, you touched on something that we did have a question around. So you talked quite a bit about social media.
Yeah.
So there are a few questions built around that. Is social media, do you see it as an aid or a hindrance? I think you were saying an aid quite a lot there, but I'd like you to respond on that. Do you think the situation is being correctly reflected on social media? Have the social media platforms served you in the same way that they serve other communities when they face a crisis? For example, like marking yourself safe. Have you been afforded the same kind of attention by Facebook than Facebook would do for other victims?
Yes, from my own
Just a
point of
question,
view.
Haneen, are you a resident of Sheikh Jarrah?
No. Actually, I live in the same neighborhood where you live.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Here you go. Go ahead.
Okay. So let's back to your question. From my own point of view, I think, yeah, the social media now is playing a major role in and spreading much more awareness. And what proves that the Israel now are trying to use many strategies with Facebook and Instagram to ban all the stories. Yani, for example, they are threatening people who keep posting about Sheikh Jarrah, about Gaza, about the crimes, or people who keep using the hashtags. Their accounts are threatening to be closed, or to stop their stories from being shown for people they have, for followers on Instagram or Facebook. So I think yes, maybe because also now we are using Facebook and the social media apps in a very accurate and right way, because we as a youth, we realized that today I can get my voice heard on social media, on Facebook. So for me, before Sheikh Jarrah, when people used to commit let me say the honor killing crimes and other things that actually happens at any community. I used to record videos on my Facebook account, and a lot of people from all over the world, they asked me what is happening now, how can we help, and what are the things that we can, for example, people who relates to UN agencies or other organizations. So I think, yeah, social media is playing a very important role at this time, and we don't have to ignore its importance, because today it's our own tool and it's our only way to get our voices heard and to let the world know the truth of the Jews and the Israel, because they always trying to show the opposite of their reality.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. And then I think this is to you and Mazen, and then it can link to Mazen talking to us as well. So to both of you, and then we'll segue over to Mazen. But so we've seen in recent years quite a lull in a drop in activism in Palestine, and a sense that Palestinians have more material issues to consider other than protesting or civil protests. So do you think there is a change now amongst the youth in their mindset? And do you think it's moved more like to that of your grandparents in the first Intifada, where there was a sense of a collective whole society movement? And if so, what are the youth calling out for?
Should I answer?
Yeah, if you can go ahead, Mazen.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, actually, without your question, this was my first point that I wanted to discuss, is about that this situation specifically is considered as a turning point, actually, because since 1936, there were no unified strike for Palestinians, Palestinians inside Israel and Palestinian in West Bank and Gaza and Jerusalem. But yesterday, it was the first unified strike for Palestinians all over historical Palestine in the same time. And this is was not happening since almost 80 or 90 years. So yeah, this is like we sense the collective Palestinian idea all over historical Palestine. If we talk about like just weeks before, the connections between Palestinians who lives inside Israel and Palestinian in the West Bank and Gaza, it was weak, and almost it was no contacting, no connections between us. But at this situation, at this point, like we have this relationships back, especially for our relationship with Palestinians who lives inside Israel. And like we sense on social media that we regain this Palestinian identity again when there is a problem in Jerusalem. So Gaza start to like defend them. When there's a problem in Hebron, in Nablus, all Palestinians now have like the same word, the same decision. But like I would point that this decision is from people, not from the political leaders, that we wish to make the union again, particularly between Gaza and Palestine, because we can observe that Israel worked for many years to divide Palestinian. We have in the West Bank, they divided West Bank for A, B, and C areas. We have the division between Gaza Strip and West Bank. And as I mentioned, that the connections between Palestinians inside Israel and other Palestinians are weak. So at this time, we like pass this apartheid system, and we like regain this connection again together. So yes, we can sense that Palestinian collective identity is back again. And the most important point is that we are reminding ourselves that we are under occupation, because as you mentioned that sometimes you feel that we forget this point, but this situation remind us again that we are under occupation and we have something to do about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you in Hebron at the moment? Are you in your home?
Yeah, actually, I'm in Hebron, and yesterday, Israeli soldiers killed like Palestinian youth beside our home. And today, as my colleague said, they killed a woman who is like 3 kilos from my home. So, and this is nothing beside what's happening in Gaza when they kill all family at once. So it's really like
staying
difficult.
inside.
What?
Are
Sorry.
you staying inside as much as possible?
Inside what?
Are you staying inside your house as much as possible?
Yeah, of course. Because like maybe yesterday I woke up at on the sound of 3 bombs. They like bombed the car for the Palestinian who were killed. They said that they suspected him, but there is no evidence for that. So they bombed his car with 3 bombs, and today they killed a woman, and they both of them in my neighborhood. So it is unsafe to move.
Especially in your neighborhood, it's an area, for those that don't know where you live, where there is no real jurisdiction, because it is almost like a non-police area.
Yes. Yeah, because it is near settlements, so there is no Palestinian jurisdiction, no police, no Palestinian police, and it is um, uh, like uh, left area.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some questions coming in, some really interesting questions. I think we'll take the questions in the chat. We have a couple more here as well. Mazen, is there anything else you'd like to say before we move on to the questions in the chat here?
Actually, I just would mention a point that I want to discuss with you is about the European political leaders' position on this situation, because like we can see on social media many questions about their like position on this this situation, and also America, as well as maybe you heard the foreign minister of the USA when he refused to condemn killing children. So I would discuss this point with you about.
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, right now, again, it's the EU is no surprise, as it's a tiger made out of paper. The Israel does not actually put any kind of a weight, and that's actually has been mentioned earlier today. It does not have a lot of, it does not put any much weight on the response from the EU. It does not fear anything coming out from the EU, because they can always use the either the Holocaust stigma, or that they already actually do have allies inside of the EU, especially Hungary today and the Czech Republic, that can actually put a veto on anything that's happening within the EU, because their decision has to be unanimous. So basically, and us, even as the Palestinian, we look at the the maximum that we're going to get out of the EU is their assistance in the humanitarian projects that are being implemented in the West Bank, specifically in Area C. And this is where the settlers really just do not like the EU. So neither the people nor the government of Israel actually put a lot of weight on the EU. So it really doesn't matter what they say. I mean, they probably will have a lot of as people, they probably will have a lot of support for us as the Palestinians, but for some reason that does not actually come to the point that they can change policies when it comes down to the Palestinian cause. So the Israelis are not really looking at the EU; they're mostly looking at the states. And again, right now, all of what we have learned and said, everything that comes from the American government is usually they start with as if that this is written in some sort of a sacred book that Israel has the right to defend itself. I mean, they said this, they said it during Joe Biden, they said it even during the Obama era. They start along with this. But actually, right now, there was an article maybe about 2 minutes ago that came in that was published, sorry, at the New York Times, in which that Martin Indyk, he used to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel a while back. He basically said that yes, Joe Biden is saying, Israel has the right to defend itself, and it has the right to actually to stand up to Hamas and what have you. But he specifically said that Joe Biden is saying this because he wants to actually to have a leeway with Bibi Netanyahu, telling him that you have the right to defend yourself. That's fine, but this has to end. So there is that kind of a ongoing discussion. Netanyahu got the attention of Joe Biden, so he's probably a little bit closer to a ceasefire. But the other issue that is actually been floating, that we're not talking about a ceasefire. We're not talking about a negotiated ceasefire, not like what took place in 2006, for example, with Hezbollah, where there was some sort of a negotiation about what to do, what not to do, where to go and where not to go. This is not happening this time around because Hamas is actually saying that they're taking the initiative. They're not saying that, okay, if Israel stops, we will stop. They're actually trying to say that, okay, let's negotiate about Sheikh Jarrah. Let's talk about having to have entry into Al-Aqsa Mosque. Let's talk about the issue in Jerusalem in general. And for this, Bibi Netanyahu is not willing to actually to go for that. There is not, after a lot of what we believe to be as a failed operation in Gaza, because they didn't do anything. They just bombed some houses, and that's about it, basically. And the rockets are still ongoing in large numbers. I mean, for the last 10 days, the Hamas and other factions have actually fired missiles on Israel more than the 52 days that actually war that took place in 2012. And it seems that they still have the capacity to actually to continue to do that. So basically, Bibi Netanyahu is not willing to give any kind of a victory for Hamas. So he's not going to go into kind of any negotiated ceasefire. They're probably going to stop firing by themselves. They are going to say, okay, fine. We have right now. We've reached the goal of the military operation. Calm is restored. We've bombed the hell out of Hamas, which is really not correct. And then we will stop without any kind of a political price to be paid. So we're expecting that something is floating as early as 6 o'clock on Thursday morning. This is what the Egyptians are putting on the table, and that's being supported by the French. And tomorrow there's going to be the Prime Minister of Germany. I think the Prime Minister of Germany is going to actually to come to Israel so that they will be able to kind of negotiate a ceasefire. But the way it looks, there's going to be a unilateral ceasefire by Israel very soon after declaring that they've succeeded in doing whatever that they want to do. The question becomes still is whether or not Hamas and other factions are going to abide by it. They're probably going to say nobody talked to us, and we're still going to go until we decide when is going to be the last day of the fighting. So it's going to be an interesting couple of days, to say the least. Interesting is not the right word.
I spoke actually to a couple of my other friends who have been in and out of prison for various protests throughout their lives. And they always take quite an extreme position. They've really experienced what it is to get on the very wrong side of the IDF. I've never heard them so angry and saying things that can't be repeated, that are wrong to say. But the real sense from them and the feeling is that there is no compromise this time. We take our lands back or we give up sort of dying. Before.
I think, the first of all, the kind of the impact on the humanitarian, on the civilians is definitely there. We cannot say it's the same as 2014, but I think from their perspective is that they're saying that finally we actually do have the power. Finally, we do take the initiatives. I mean, there was one article the other day that was really amazing, is that especially on the 6th day of the war, of the last escalation, when you're saying that 1967, you have Israel has defeated the army of Jordan, defeated the army of Egypt, defeated the army of Lebanon, as well as Syria, and then they've taken the Sinai, they've taken the West Bank, and they've taken the Golan Heights, and basically shut up of Lebanon, and being this miraculous victory that has taken place in 1967. Now, within 6 days, you actually do have rockets that have been fired, more rockets that have been fired at Israel more than in its entire history. Israel is not daring to actually to go into the small little strip, using ground forces. All of the war that's been taking place using, Air Force, and of course, Air Force never ever actually have succeeded in the or kind of ending a war or winning a war. So basically, even the Israelis are saying 6 days, 1967, 6 days into 2021, and we still cannot actually stop these guys from doing what they're doing. So basically, there is a seed of admitting some sort of a defeat in that area. And I do realize that a lot of the Palestinians, especially the youth, especially the ones who were actually born into Oslo since 1993, that they're, with all of the settlements and all of the harassment and all of the taking over lands and settler impunity, basically, they're finally saying that, or seeing that a Palestinian is actually being taken seriously, whether or not they can call him terrorist or whatever. But, finally, there is somebody who can say that at 6 o'clock, I am going to attack Tel Aviv. At 6 o'clock, I'm going to be attacking Jerusalem if you do not, stop this, settler parade into East Jerusalem. And we finally see that the Israelis are actually, whether they like it or not, that they are abiding by that. That kind of a sense of pride, that sense of winning, quote unquote, some sense of victory, we haven't seen since 1967. And the promises that has been given as a two-state solution and Oslo, and even what Joe Biden is talking about right now, everybody knows it's not going to happen. The two-state solution is a farce. It's a fallacy. Maybe it was a good idea back in 1993, but it's not doable at this time. So this is why I think that people are, yes, let's go for it, basically.
Yeah. I mean, my friend has said that he doesn't want to leave his house in the Daesh camp, the refugee camp in Bethlehem, until he comes out and doesn't see a wall and doesn't see a checkpoint, I fear he's never going to leave his house. Okay, so we have a lot of questions. Let's see. We have from Anne. I think it's pretty clear to us now what Netanyahu's motives are for the current escalation, and my heart goes out to you all. But what about Hamas? Do you think they inadvertently took his bait? Is this part of a power play with Fatah? Or do you consider this an inevitable expression of their mounting frustration against the occupation? Who wants to answer?
I don't want to dominate the the conversation. If anybody, if my colleagues would like to, I can say something about it. But if my colleagues would love to come in, I'm
want
fine.
to come in. Can you see it in the chat? It's the second question down in the chat. Do we think that Hamas took the bait with Netanyahu, or do we think that this is more to do with Hamas and Fatah, especially with the elections that were coming up, the first election since 2006, wasn't it?
There were two arguments with that. There was an article that actually took place in Haaretz, basically saying that these two guys are fit with each other. They are just a perfect match. Hamas needs Netanyahu to always come back and say, okay, look what they're doing. At the same time, Netanyahu wants to have this kind of a monster that is standing there, that is going to try to, annihilate the state of Israel and destroy it and stuff like that. And I'm going to be the one who's going to stop that from happening. So they're just perfect match. The other argument was that Hamas actually had no other option but to actually to interfere. Hamas has been looking for legitimacy, let's say, for a long time, and having to actually take over Gaza has shown that actually having to be in the opposition is so different from being the governor. So they actually did have a hard time in running the show in Gaza, and they were really looking for that Palestinian election to actually to kind of be to be legitimate in terms of having to go through elections. And actually there's a lot of people are saying that they're going to win by a landslide, even though they're going to win, but not with a landslide. So it was such a major. So a lot of people were saying that Fatah is not going to actually to allow the elections to take place, and they ended up saying, "Oh, because of Jerusalem, we cannot do it." But actually, internally, is because Fatah knew that they're going to actually to face major loss in the election. So in terms of Hamas were actually going into one unified ticket. Fatah actually had at least three different tickets, and that actually would have led to more powerful for Hamas. Hamas, when they went into the elections, they went with one campaign with the slogan is that Jerusalem unites us. The other ones were talking about different things, but now they basically say, a lot of people were saying that when the demonstrations has taken place in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they were calling for Hamas to actually to interfere with that slogan, that Hamas actually didn't have any other choice but to interfere in this and start the conflict. Again, there was definitely a push by Bibi Netanyahu since day one that they want to go for it, and actually ended up in Gaza. I think that maybe the bait was there, but it was just too risky for Hamas not to take it. I mean, they would have actually jeopardized their chances with the Palestinian people, because Fatah was definitely going to say that they called up on you. You're talking about Jerusalem all the time, And when it comes down to actually doing something, and you are the only one who can do something about it, you basically did not do what you're supposed to be doing. So damn if you do and damn if you don't. But Hamas found itself obligated to respond.
And do you have any further questions on that?
No, that's great. Thank you. No, that's very clear. It's sort of it sort of answered what I thought it was, but he's answered it much more succinctly. And the fact I also hadn't heard that people in the Al-Aqsa Mosque had actually requested Hamas to step up and take action. So that is new information that's very useful and important. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about specifically, they said, Min shan Allah, ya Gaza yallah. For God's sake, Gaza, please come in. And that was like a big chant in the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Great, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. I am going to come back to the social media questions. Okay, they're all social media. I'm going to stay with them then, unless I feel like there's something else here that we haven't done.
Yes, Scarlett. Yeah, I just would answer the question about the freedom for Palestinian media.
Yeah.
Before 2 days, Israel strikes the building where there many media outlet. So yeah, they bombed a building that has Al Jazeera channel and associated press. And also in every war on Gaza, they strike Al-Aqsa television, which is more like representing Hamas. So there is no freedom for Palestinian press. And besides that, also there is always Palestinian journalists are always a target for Israeli rockets and bullets. So there is no freedom for Palestinian press. And Palestinians, of course, they are trying to use social media as a platform for unification, for expressing themselves. But there is also many challenges on social media, as my colleague Haneen said, that it became more difficult and difficult to post anything about the situation.
Let's go to the other social media questions as well then. Yeah, so I mean but social media a bit different. What about people feeling, obviously you're saying it's not safe to be a journalist on the ground, but is there a sense of being unsafe using social media in the West Bank? Do you feel like you have to censor what you write?
I can have this question. So basically, and based on the things that we see in the field and the stories of people who used to be in the field during all these situations, the journalists, unfortunately, the Jews now are targeting journalists as well, who are in the field, regardless of the agency they are coming with, or regardless of from where they are coming, because they want to ban or to put any obstacles or challenges for them, to avoid them from telling the truth and to show the reality of them in the field. And going back to the question, where if we feel that much, if we have that much that freedom of expressing what we think or what we feel on social media, what I usually say, and from my point of view, we have the direct occupation and the indirect occupation. So if we are allowed to express our opinions of what is happening now, as my colleague mentioned, a lot of things, a lot of stories now that relates to the current situation are not shown on these platforms, and a lot of things a lot of our accounts, that especially the people with a large number of followers, their accounts are threatened to be closed and so they in order to stop publishing and talking about these issues. So I don't think that, unfortunately, we have that much freedom, but still through these platforms, through the public and private groups, we can come together. We can share what is happening now with people, Palestinian people who live in other countries, and with people from all over the world. So I think, yeah, still there are a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles, but still there are a lot of ways to show the truth.
Yeah. And just at the beginning of what you said, you meant that Israelis rather than the Jews, didn't you, Haneen?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Okay.